Both Baseball America and MLB Pipeline have their top 100 lists out, and there are some interesting differences between the two, and I wanted to know why, so we broke it down. Let's talk about it.
You are Locked On MLB Prospects, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, welcome on in to Locked On MLB Prospects, your home for all things minor league baseball. I'm your host, Lindsey Crosby, baseball writer and podcaster. Thank you for making this your first listen. Every single day, we're proudly part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, the official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started today. So, Baseball America and MLB Pipeline are two of the most commonly used and recognized experts when it comes to prospects and prospect rankings, prospect evaluation, and all of that. And I found it really interesting when I was kind of scrolling through both of their top 100 lists, how some guys, they have the exact same placement in the top 100, number 5 or number 23 or whatever. And some of them, they are wildly different. So I threw everything into a spreadsheet, and we're going to kind of go through real quick and look at some of where they're the same, some of where they're different, and discuss why. And so when you look at this, 6 players are in the exact same location on both lists. So both Baseball America and MLB Pipeline have them in the same 1 through 100 spot. A lot of the similarity, not all, but a lot, is at the very top. Both outlets have Baltimore Orioles shortstop Gunnar Henderson as their number 1 prospect in baseball. Both of them have Arizona Diamondbacks center fielder Corbin Carroll, who we talked about yesterday, just signed that big new deal. They have him at number 2. And then both outlets have Cardinals outfielder Jordan Walker as their number 4 prospect in baseball. The difference right there is what's in the middle, what's missing, right? Number 3 in Baseball America is number 8 in MLB Pipeline. We'll get to that in just a second. The other matches, I think, end up being more coincidental than anything else. Colson Montgomery, shortstop for the White Sox, is number 38 on both lists. Feels like a coincidence. Michael Busch, second baseman for the Dodgers, number 54 on both lists. Gavin Stone, right-hand pitcher for the Dodgers, number 56 on both lists. Again, I do think that is a little bit more of a coincidence than anything else, but I do find it really interesting. That's actually the middle of 3 consecutive Dodgers prospects on the Baseball America list. They have Michael Busch 54, Ryan Pepio 55, Gavin Stone 56, and you see that quite a bit when you're flipping through. Here's these 2 prospects together on the list. Marco Luciano and Kyle Harrison for the Giants, 36 and 37. Brooks Lee and Emmanuel Rodriguez of the Twins, 45-46. Tink Hence and Mason Wynn of the Cardinals, 47-48. Robert Hassel, Elijah Green of the Nationals, 57-58. Just really interesting how it happens where you have guys that are consecutive. This happens multiple times. Back half of the top 100. Henry Davis and Luis Ortiz on Baseball America, 73 and 74. DL Hall and Jordan Westberg of the Orioles, 75 and 76. So find that kind of interesting, just how that works out. Again, I do think it is just, you're looking at all of these guys, you kind of have them evaluated around the same, you end up putting them in the same place. That's fine. There are 3 guys that are pretty high up on Baseball America's list that are not present on MLB Pipelines, and I think this is due to the way that you evaluate and the criteria that you have for some of these guys. So, when you're looking at the list, Gabriel Moreno traded from the Blue Jays to the Diamondbacks is number 12 on Baseball America's list. He is not listed on MLB Pipeline's list. Same thing, you look at Shane Baz of the Tampa Bay Rays, 31 on Baseball America's list, not listed on MLB Pipeline's list. And to me, this goes back into the definition of a prospect and what you have to do to earn service time and how it's different. So MLB's definition to lose prospect status and to then just be a rookie or whatever, 45 total days on an active roster. So Gabriel Moreno spent, I believe, around 50 days up with the Blue Jays last year. He got in 25 games, had, I think it's 73 plate appearances. Baseball America uses a different criteria for what they consider a prospect. They have more flexibility. MLB Pipeline is sticking with what has been collectively bargained as a rule. Baseball America says greater than 130 at-bats, 50 innings pitched, or 30 relief appearances means you are no longer a prospect. So Gabriel Moreno spent more than 45 days. He's passed MLB's official rule to no longer be to be a prospect, but he has less than 130 at-bats because he didn't play every day. So therefore, he's still a prospect to Baseball America. Shane Baz has thrown 40 1/3 innings in the regular season. Baseball America requires 50 innings pitched, so therefore they have him as a prospect, but time he spent on the injured list does accumulate service time at the major league level, so MLB has him as not a prospect anymore. The third one is Cody Senga, the right-hand pitcher that the Mets signed out of Japan. He's on Baseball America's list. He's not on MLB Pipeline's list. I'm not 100% sure why. I don't know if that's something where they just exclude, like they say, yes, he's going to be rookie eligible for rookie awards, but we're not considering him a prospect because he was a top-level professional in Japan. I don't quite know. I'm assuming that's what it is. But some of the really early differences in that top 10, 15, I find interesting. Jackson Chourio of the Milwaukee Brewers is the number 3 prospect in baseball to Baseball America, but the number 8 prospect to MLB Pipeline. Reminder what he did last year. He was a 2021 IFA, and he blew through the lower minors last year, ending up in AA. 99 games, 288, 342, 538, 20 home runs, 55 extra base hits, 32 walks to 118 strikeouts, and 16 of 20 on stolen bases. The consensus here to figure out why these guys are considered different in these two lists, and granted, it's not a big difference. It's number 3 to number 8. This whole thing, you've got 6,500 prospect eligible guys in the minors, so this entire list represents 1.5% of the total. But when you look at these two and the difference, it comes down to the individual grades on the hit tool and the power tool. Baseball America has a little bit higher on the hit tool, giving him a 60 compared to a 55. And the power tool giving him a 70, whereas MLB Pipeline has him at a 60. When you go back and you look at his season, Jackson Chourio struggled with breaking stuff away early in the year, and he made adjustments throughout the year and got better at that. But it was such a small sample of the 1 year of performance that you can have some questions about where the overall ceiling of the hit tool is, and your power tool is only as good as your hit tool. So if you think that the hit tool is lower, you can lower the ceiling on the game power, even though you may agree on the raw power. So that kind of explains the difference between number 3 and number 8. Eury Perez is an arm that there's also disagreement on. MLB Pipeline has him at 13. Baseball America has him at 7. And when you think about what he did last year, he got 17 games in AA after being a 2019 IFA. 4.08 ERA in 75 innings pitched, 106 strikeouts, so 12.7 per 9, to 25 walks, dead on 3 walks per 9, with 9 home runs allowed. The final grades, the ceiling on the final grades is different. Baseball America has him as a potential 70 overall, compared to a 60 from MLB Pipeline. And it kind of comes back to the secondaries and the control, not necessarily feeling like the secondaries are as good and that the ceiling on the control is as high. A couple other interesting at the very top, just real quick. Francisco Alvarez is number 9 to Baseball America, but number 3 to Pipeline. And then shortstop Anthony Volpe of the Yankees is number 14 in Baseball America and number 5 on Pipeline. Maybe a little bit of East Coast bias there with the league office in New York. Who knows? In just a minute, I want to talk about some of the biggest differences on this list in the pitchers, see if we can figure out why. But first, today's episode is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. The midway point of the NBA season is here. We are getting ready to start the NCAA tournament this week. Now is the perfect time to download FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. New customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 back in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. So download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. Safe, secure, super easy to use. You can bet on everything from the money line, points scored. You can include different kind of core markets like the spread, the money line, the total, player props, so rebounds, assists, that kind of stuff. You can do exclusive bets that just FanDuel has, like the 2x3. Will there be 2 3-pointers scored in the first 3 minutes? And then you can combine all of this stuff for the chance at a bigger payout with a same-game parlay. So don't miss your chance to get your no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 back in bonus bets when you go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon to learn more. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sportsbook of the Locked On Podcast Network. Okay, looking at some of the biggest differences between Baseball America and MLB Pipeline when it comes to pitchers. The big one here, the most egregious difference, was Quinn Priester, right-hand pitcher for the Pirates. So when you go through this Excel sheet, I made an Excel spread and separated it here. It is something where MLB Pipeline has Quinn Priester as the number 60 prospect in all of baseball. Baseball America does not have him in the top 100. So the difference is at least 40 spots, if not more. I initially, when I set out to do this, I said, I'm going to only find guys that were on both lists. But Quinn Priester is very close. He's in one of the last ones left off Baseball America's list they've talked about. So I wanted to make sure I mentioned it. 2019 18th rounder. And when you watch what he did last year, so we got 1 start in low A, 1 start in high A, most of the year in double A Altoona with the curve, but got 2 starts towards the end of the year in triple A Indianapolis. Of these starts, 3.29 ERA in 90 1/3 innings, 89 strikeouts, so 8.9 strikeouts per 9, 230 walks, 3 walks per 9, 6 home runs allowed. The big difference here in Quinn Priester, when you look at what Baseball America thinks about him and what MLB Pipeline thinks about him, is the fastball quality, right? So both organizations agree that the game for Quinn Priester is he's got a very, very good curveball. He has a slider and a changeup that are league average, and he has a 4-seamer that kind of downplays a bit from its velocity, and so he's worked to mitigate that. So the 4-seamer sits 95 or so, which for a righty is fine. Velocity is perfectly fine, but it gets very low swing and miss. It's a very kind of flat pitch, doesn't have a lot of movement on it. The shape isn't great. And so what Quinn Priester has done is he brought in a sinker last year, throwing a 2-seamer that he uses it almost as much as the 4-seamer and got over 50% ground balls with it when he was in double A last year. And so now the game is very much, I've got the 2-seamer, the 2-seamer coming downhill. I've got the curveball that'll just dart out of the strike zone. We have a slider that's more of a horizontal mover, and then a changeup. And we're trying to just induce a ton of ground balls. MLB Pipeline has the ceiling of that fastball as a plus pitch. because they're acknowledging he can get outs with it. They're just not strikeouts. They're ground ball outs. Baseball America very much was looking and saying it's still an ordinary pitch. We're not it's not swing and miss stuff. And so because of that, that's where the discrepancy comes in on the grade, and it means that the difference in the rankings is at least 40 spots on the list. Brandon Pfaadt, right-hand pitcher for the Diamondbacks, is another guy with a big discrepancy between the lists. So Brandon Pfaadt is at 26th on Baseball America's list. He's at 59 on MLB Pipeline's list. And this comes back to the quality of the secondaries and the control. So reminder on Brandon Pfaadt, 2025th rounder out of Bellarmine, which I believe is in Kansas. Kentucky. It's in Kentucky. Started 29 games last year. This was mostly it was not evenly split. 2/3 in AA Amarillo, 1/3 in AAA Reno, which are both, if you remember, the ball will fly in these parks, and you'll see that in a second. 3.83 ERA in 167 innings pitched, 218 strikeouts, which was the most in a minor league season since 2001. This dude took the ball every fifth day for the entire season. So it's 11.7 strikeouts per nine, for the record. 33 walks, 1.8 walks per nine, but here's the kicker. 28 home runs. Okay, the difference between the ranking at 26 and the ranking at 59 by Pipeline comes back to, again, the quality of the secondaries and the control. Baseball America points out the fastball sits in the low to mid 90s, 94 or so. He can touch 97, and it really kind of looks like a cutter, but still has that carry and life up in the zone. And then a big sweepy slider, low 80s, as well as improvement on the changeup, which obviously is going to move the other direction from a slider, giving you that very good horizontal sight picture for a pitcher. They are for a hitter to face. They give the fastball a plus grade. They give the slider a plus grade and the changeup an above average grade, and say he's got plus control as well. He's really good at throwing strikes and working kind of on the edges of the zone to try to avoid giving up home runs, although obviously it didn't work. He gave up a lot last year. When you flip over to MLB Pipeline, they're a little bit less confident in the quality of the slider. They call it above average. They say the sweep is promising. Sounds like they think it's a little more inconsistent with the sweep. And then both these outlets don't think the curveball is that great. They both have it as below average, but they also have the control a little bit lower. And I think that Pipeline is wrong here because they give the control a 55 compared to Baseball America's 60. But then they turn around and point out that he had the lowest walk rate, that's 4.8%, amongst all of the Arizona Diamondbacks pitchers who qualified with a full season of stats. And so I think it's something where they considered some of those pitches that were rocked were misses in the zone. And so you're still going to punish him control-wise because he missed in the zone when he was trying to throw on the edge versus missing outside of the zone for a ball. Control can take multiple different forms. Where you miss counts. It's not just the fact, did you miss? You can't just go off walk rate alone to say this guy has good control or bad control. They say his miss was in the zone. We definitely need to acknowledge that and mark him down for it. The third guy, right-hand pitcher Tink Hence of the Cardinals. 30 place discrepancy on this list. He was 47th to Baseball America and 77th to MLB Pipeline. And the difference here, for the most part, comes out to the overall grade that they have for him. So, 2020 second rounder supplemental out of high school. We got 16 games last year, and the stats are fantastic. 1.38 ERA in 52 and a third innings, 81 strikeouts, so 13.9 per nine, to 15 walks, 2.6 per nine, only gave up one home run. The overall grade is the difference Baseball America has him as a 60 grade overall, whereas Pipeline has him as a 55. It's something where they both discuss the depth issues that he has as far as like not going very deep into outings. When you look at what Tink Hence did, a lot of his outings, and part of this is them trying to manage his innings. Part of this is understanding where his frame isn't the biggest. I want to say he's like 6'1", 170, things like that. So he's a little undersized as far as what you look for from a traditional starter. And then there was some worries about when he gets into the stretch, he starts to have a little bit more command because he has a little bit more effort because he can't utilize that full windup to hold the velocity, the mid-90s fastball and things like that. So physical development is needed, and then that's going to help not only with maintaining velocity out of the stretch, but also with overall stamina. And this is just something where they both think he's a really good pitcher. There's just a little disagreement about what the ceiling is because of the limited workload and the consistency of the command because of the extra effort as you go into the start. In just a minute, I want to get to the biggest differences in the hitters. There's quite a bit of range here between some of these guys, and we'll do that next right here on Locked on MLB Prospects. And we are back. So, looking at the differences between MLB Pipeline and Baseball America's top 100 lists, and looking at the hitters, some of the biggest differences, the one that stood out to me is outfielder Emmanuel Rodriguez of the Minnesota Twins. There is a 42-place difference in these rankings. MLB Pipeline has him at number 88 overall, while Baseball America has him at number 46. Quick reminder about who he is. 2019 IFA, got in 47 games in A-ball last year. 272, 492, 552 is the slash line. 9 home runs, 17 extra base hits, again in 47 games. 57 walks to 52 strikeouts, and 11 to 16 on stolen bases. So there's been issues with the hit tool in the past. And I think some of the difference here between the rankings, you see Pipeline has it as a 50 grade hit tool, Baseball America has it as a 60, is because he's been improving and getting better like a lot of young players do. He was only 19 last year, but his season ended in June by knee surgery. And so because of that, you're in a scenario where he wasn't necessarily able to put enough changes on tape to convince everybody that he had fixed these issues. When you go back and watch what he did, in 2021, he got just under 40 games in the complex league when he came stateside for the first time. 214, 346, 524. Very much struggled with breaking pitches. Emmanuel Rodriguez, you could get him with breaking stuff, and it wasn't necessarily great. He fixed a lot of that, and his chase rate is now really, really good. He had one of the lowest chase rates in the entire minors last year, but he showed significant difficulty with good off speed. And so he had swing and miss in the zone. Something where he's geared up for a fastball, he's ready to get that velocity. If you can execute a good changeup, which a lot of young players aren't used to seeing good changeups because a lot of young pitchers don't have them. If you can execute a good changeup, you could get him to swing and miss. And so it's something where Baseball America feels better about the ability of him to improve on the off-speed recognition, looking back at how he improved dealing with spin in 2021. MLB Pipeline didn't necessarily see some of that improvement and is a little bit less sold on the improvement. So that's why your hit tool is a 60 with Baseball America and a 50 with Pipeline. And that can account for a 42 spot difference in the rankings. Some other guys I thought were interesting. Shortstop Noelvi Marte of the Cincinnati Reds. 2018 IFA was traded to the Reds from the Mariners, part of the Luis Castillo deal. Got 115 games in high A between both organizations. 279, 371, 458. 19 home runs, 42 extra base hits, 59 walks to 107 strikeouts, and 23 of 32 on stolen bases. Baseball America has him at number 63. MLB Pipeline has him at number 29, so 34 spots different. And it comes down to the quality of the hit tool and issues with, or questions about conditioning. He actually is below average. He's fringe hit tool, 45 on Baseball America, where Pipeline has him at perfectly average as a 50. When you watch a lot of what he did last year, you see questionable swing decisions on breaking balls. And so that's the big discrepancy between the hit tool, and that can lead to, obviously, overall questions. Again, the power tool is dependent on the hit tool. Baseball America actually gives him a better hit tool, a better power tool, 65 power tool. It's just something where if you struggle too much with breaking pitches, you roll over it, you swing and miss on something down and away, things like that, you can't get that power into games. There was also a little bit more concern on Baseball America's part about some of the physical stuff. He's already slowed down a bit as he's physically developed. He's gotten kind of thicker in the trunk, in the legs, and in the Arizona Fall League, he was playing third base versus shortstop. One, ton of shortstops in Cincinnati, so that makes sense. But two, he probably, because of his speed, which is decidedly just average, and the lack of that quick twitch, short range, rangy stuff that you would use for shortstop, they've downgraded him a bit as far as the defensive ceiling and the speed compared to where Pipeline has him. So that accounts for 34 spots difference, and 63 Baseball America, 29 MLB Pipeline for Noelvi Marte. The last guy with an opposite flip, 35 spots different, is Zach Neto of the Angels. 53rd for Baseball America, 89th for MLB Pipeline. So 2022 first rounder out of Campbell, got 37 games in last year between high A and then double A. Spent most of that time, 30 of those games, in double A Rocket City, and just destroyed. Total slash line of 299, 377, 476, 5 home runs, 15 extra base hits, 12 walks to 33 strikeouts, and 5 of 7 on stolen bases. Every single bit of this discrepancy between these two sites comes back to the defense. MLB Pipeline is lower on the speed, is lower on the defensive potential, is lower on the arm. I think a lot of it is, I like the hands, I like the instincts and things like that he has at short. The internal clock isn't really great for Zach Neto as a guy who went from Campbell to double A. It makes sense. And so Baseball America is banking a little bit more that as he plays more shortstop and in the minor leagues, that internal clock will fix itself, while Pipeline isn't necessarily as optimistic about what he's going to do defensively going forward. They think he's just kind of an average runner. And the arm, they called it solid. They pointed out that he pitched as a reliever at Campbell. He could hit the low 90s, but they don't necessarily know if the accuracy is quite there. And then again, the timing, the instincts, and things like that. They think that he could move up quickly as a second baseman, and the way that they word it, it kind of sounds like they think he might be able to be an impact by the end of the year in 2023 in the bigs as a second baseman, versus maybe you'd think of 2024 as a shortstop. I would rather have him be a shortstop, and I think that's part of it as well. If you think you're going to move him in to second, that probably lowers the overall grade and the ceiling of him because of the less premium defensive position. Fantastic week this week. In the spirit of the Corbin Carroll contract extension, we're talking about some of the debuts from last year, and should you or should you not sign these guys to extensions, and making the case. So stay tuned for that tomorrow. In the meantime, if you have questions for Monday's mailbag, I'm on Twitter at Crosby Baseball. Show's on Twitter at Locked On Farm. You can email us, lockedonmlbprospects@gmail.com, or drop your questions in the Locked On MLB Prospects Discord. Link's in the episode description. Link is in the show notes. Until tomorrow's show, this has been Locked On MLB Prospects.